we'd call traditional media, where 1 o'clock bulletin, 7 o'clock p.m. and 9 o'clock, everything seemed to work towards making those bulletins rich and giving content, and that's what was then. But that has changed. And maybe your experience in whether that change has forced the newsroom to change in this day and age that we're in.
Yeah, certainly it has forced the newsroom to change for the simple reason that we now have more platforms that you can place content on. And if you look at the landscape, we now have wider reach, okay, using social media, for example. And two things that stand out for me is, one, consumer behavior is changing. The consumer wants to be able to talk back to stories. So a lot of mainstream media have put in place a feedback mechanism where they can interact directly with the people. Another thing that is picking up is that we're seeing people now able to pick videos and watch them on demand. All right? Because, for example, if the CS is being arrested in the morning and somebody is right next there with a phone, a smartphone, and is able to capture those pictures, then it means a lot of viewers now don't have the luxury of waiting for prime news to be told that an arrest was executed. So mainstream has sort of, with the side of the eye, realized that that's the way to go. And so they are roping in those platforms and placing their content on all those platforms. So certainly, yes, no doubt, they are also adapting.
There's a shift.
Yeah, but they know that content still remains king. So no matter how many platforms we're going to have, I think the science of telling stories, who, where, what, why, how, still remains the same.
Still remains the same.
Content is extremely key still.
I'll come to you, Kalechi, and you have had experience also on what we'd call traditional media on radio, but now you're a content creator and using the online platform that you are to do that. Your experience so far, and what possibly informed your change, and what audience you're targeting at that point in time?
Okay, so I've done traditional media from radio, I've done TV as well, and then now I decided to move on to this platform, which I felt like, one, as long as you're good at the content creation, because key, like Thomas said, you have to be able to
Content is king.
Content is king. You have to be able to create the content. You have to have the right content. And then by the time you're understanding who is your audience, who are they? And right now, the people who are really, really, really on this online platforms, they're the millennials. They're the people who are into the digital world. They want to be now. They want to know what's happening, and they want it fast, right? We call them the microwave generation for a reason. They want it now. They want
instant.
it now.
Everything is
and
instant.
So because that whole instant aspect was already created by the nature of, we were opened up into the internet world, we were able to see how fast we can get information. The key is, who's going to give you the quickest information, and can I choose what I want? And I felt like when people start now being able to choose what they want, when you're sitting on traditional, you're waiting for them to hopefully choose you, you don't know. Now, if I'm constantly on a digital platform, then you are going to see me often. I will be there. My content will be there for you to see often. And I know even traditional, you end up having to put your content online, because and for most shows, I find that that's where you get most of your traction. It may not be now that people have woken up to watch us, but then later they'll catch up and find out what happened. So I think we both need each other.
We both need each other. All right, let me come to you, Koki, and this obviously has changed how the newsroom works, but in terms of content remaining king and giving context, because like Tom mentioned, if the CS is being arrested, there's a picture that comes in, and that's what's happening. But then there is the story behind the story. Is that left to traditional media to break that down? And does it still have the authority that it had then in terms of now having that background story?
Okay, just to give you like a background, theory bit of it. Disruption theory talks about the ability to adapt technologies and to do almost something similar an industry is doing, and of course compete with that industry. So therefore, we have social media coming in as based on internet, and more or less is a technology that has been adopted by other players, other content, we call them digital content providers, who basically have, created niche audiences and therefore taken away the normalcy of legacy media audiences. So that's one thing we have to look at, that it's no longer normal. It's no longer, I like the phrase business as usual,
right,
for legacy media. But bottom line, like Tom says and Kalecha says, content is content.
It remains king.
There are those things that the journalist will always do: factification, verification, and distribution. That is the obvious. So even if we get stories from social media on those platforms prepared, or whatever it is, whatever form we get it, we still want to come back to legacy media to confirm whether what has been placed there in terms of content would be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe I can just contribute to what she's saying in terms of the factual and the actual, making sure that it's right. If we're looking at it from a news perspective, that's the kind of content that this digital platform is providing, obviously they have to follow the same guidelines. Now, for myself, if I'm providing you with an entertainment, interview-based kind of thing, I may not be super confined in those brackets, because what I feel with the platform that we are now creating in new media is that we're able to be more entertainment, more relaxed, more, not super confined in this, you have to be in a certain way, you have to look a certain way. It's more freeing. And I feel like the way society is now, they want less serious, they want to be more connected to, we're Africans, especially like for us here, we like those stories that I can relate to you really personally, and get to know you. So it doesn't have to be super serious.
Super serious.
Yeah.
As traditional newsrooms would have it.
Exactly.
Exactly. And Tom, where does that leave us? And content being king and the newsroom being the newsroom, we seem sometimes to be stuck. I mean, we still have newspapers. There's still people who will read this, despite the fact that you can get it online. But there's also the question of penetration, because when you talk about digital, in the urban areas, we may be okay, but rural areas, that has not reached. But are we stuck on traditional ways of delivering the same message that we've been delivering for years, as opposed to transitioning?
Look, let's go back to pre-colonial days and beyond. The image of a Maasai person running with a letter has been sent to deliver. And fast forward today, at the click of a button, you can send a message, through your phone. If you look at that evolution, the job of sending a message remains the same. It doesn't change. What has happened is we have more convergence. So the same newspaper you're holding is now available on a digital platform. All right? So content, subjecting stories to various levels of scrutiny is extremely important. All right? I watched an interview where a top journalist talked about journalism being gossip, but verified gossip. So those levels of scrutiny still remain extremely important. Because even when you go to the social media platforms, in the back of your mind, you always sort of want to sneak in quickly to mainstream and just confirm whether what you're getting is actually true. So traditional media, my brother,
is here to stay.
The elephant in the room.
Is here to stay, and I'm sure Tom will defend it. Yes,
and I think even if we are, on online platforms, we are allowed to flex our muscle a bit, to be free a bit. Bottom line is, you're competing with so many people who are providing that content, and you're also having an audience that has attention issues, like the attention economy situation, where they'll pay attention to you today, but tomorrow they have options, isn't it, to do the same thing. So it is the quality of your content really that will drive that attention and keep it going. One of the things that people like to talk about is, I have these many likes, clicks and all that. But what really makes your content worth it all is the engagement level, such that if people engage more with what you're doing, it means they're watching and communicating the same. I'd like to give an example of The Red Table by Jada Pinkett. You know, when you look at the conversations that happen after the show and how it has mutated into a space where people talk about their personal issues, then you can say that is engaging enough and the content is well prepared. And one advantage that legacy media has, even online, is that the fact people will converse. We did a research on conversations over elections 2016 to 2017. And most of the conversation that we found talking about elections was directed to the media. And any other conversation that was guided around elections was from the media to social media platforms. So then, if you're driving conversation, anybody else outside the space must have that niche audience. First, they'll be limited in terms of targeting all your audiences. So they'll have that niche audience. And if that niche audience then engages with the content, then we will say that that is successful.
That is successful.
And you'll find that there'll be a big difference between a trained journalist or somebody who's been a media personality's content creation to that of maybe somebody who's just in the street who can be able to write properly, you know, like a blogger, or, you know, there'll be that distinct difference.
Okay, and you've all agreed that content is king, but I want to come to you, Kalechi, on maybe what you'd say through your experience would make a successful content creator, because what has happened now, and I'm sure you've seen some of those videos where everybody is like, welcome to my channel, subscribe, and then they're like talking about something and like, oh, really, would I?
To do.
The 10 things to do or not do. And I want us to watch Kalechi's